So big doings in Europe, right? On, I think it was Friday, Theresa May, she's failed 3 times to get Brexit passed, to get any kind of Brexit action going on. And she came out and she said she is resigning basically as prime minister, and the Conservative Party, the Tories, will replace her.
It is and will always remain a matter of deep regret to me that I have not been able to deliver Brexit. It will be for my successor to seek a way forward that honours the result of the referendum. To succeed, he or she will have to find consensus in Parliament where I have not. Such a consensus can only be reached if those on all sides of the debate are willing to compromise. Our politics may be under strain, but there is so much that is good about this country, so much to be proud of, so much to be optimistic about. I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
There's no crying in politics. You know, I don't know if it's a good look to come out and talk about how you're the second female prime minister and then burst into tears. I'm not sure that worked for me. Nobody cared. Why should people care if you're resigning a job you failed at and you burst into tears? That's not really important. The people shouldn't worry about that. Followed by European Parliament elections, in which right-wing groups dominated. And this is really interesting because if you read the papers, they basically say, well, the center, the kind of center-left, center-right that has been dominating the EU all these years was kind of erased. I mean, and it caved in, basically. And then they say, well, it was both the left and the right. And that's sort of true. That is sort of true. But it was really the right and a coalition of left-wing parties that came in, an eco party, a left-wing party that came in. That all kind of balances out, but the right came on very strong. Now, the thing about the right is in Europe are nationalist parties coming in from different nations. So there's a real question about whether or not they can work together. If you think about it for a minute, right, it makes perfect sense that if you're a nationalist, you are defending your national character, which makes it a little harder for you to collaborate with somebody from another nation who's defending his national character. That is the history of Europe, right? They've been killing each other all these years as one group. France usually or Germany tried to take over the entire place, and the country said, no, we want to be our individual countries. Now, through the EU, Germany has essentially economically dominated the area. Third try is a charm. And some of these countries, because of Angela Merkel's governance, she let in all these Muslims, basically refugees. She let them in their millions. And because it's now the EU, they can travel from place to place. So no matter where they come in, they can sweep into the entire country. And some of these countries didn't like it, especially the countries in Eastern Europe. In Britain, the domination of the Brexit Party, it was something like 35% for the Brexit Party, which was huge, wiping out the traditional Tories, led by Mr. Brexit himself, Nigel Farage. And Farage, you know, sometimes the EU elections are not reflected in the local elections. Sometimes the party that wins in the EU elections in Brussels doesn't win back at home. But Farage says, look, October 31st is the next deadline for Brexit. If you don't do it, you're going to see this happen again.
When people woke up on March the 30th this year and realised we hadn't left the European Union, that's when in large numbers they became ready to vote for a different party. The Brexit Party is only 6 weeks old. Think about it in that context. This is one hell of an achievement. And I would say this, looking ahead. The next date we're supposed to leave on is the 31st of October. And that date will become a bigger and bigger factor in people's minds as these next 5 months go by. If we don't leave on the 31st of October, then the Brexit Party will go on to a general election and stun everybody there too.
So the thing is, I'm always loath to talk about other countries. And the reason is I lived in another country. I lived in Britain for 7 years. And when I moved there, I realized very rapidly that unless you live in a country, you don't know anything about it. You think you know the facts, you know the way it's reported, but you don't know anything about it. And a lot of this rise of nationalist parties, as you can tell by the name, has to do with this unbridled immigration that has let all these people in, many of them Muslims, many of them hostile to the West, right? And also the reactions that people have had of the political correctness, of you're under arrest if you say that Islam is not a good religion, of, yes, your daughter's being raped, but don't come here because we don't want to seem to be anti-Islam by arresting the people who raped her. That's the kind of thing that people are reacting to. And of course, the other side is saying racist, racist, racist. Is it? And is that what's happening? We'll talk about it in a sec. Let me show you how hard it is to get information, right? In the East, Eastern Europe, which has been very they lost their freedom to the Nazis. They lost their freedom to the Soviets. They are, quite understandably, not in a big hurry to lose their freedom and their national character to the EU's sense of goodness and decency and Christian, take all our immigrants and shut up. They're not going to lose that. So they are being called bigots all the time, and they're constantly being written about as if they are basically mini Hitlers, baby Hitlers, all of them. So Viktor Orban is the guy in Hungary. Here's from the New York Times. This is not from Knucklehead Row, but it is from what used to be a newspaper. The New York Times writes, "A friend to Israel and to bigots, Viktor Orban plays a double game on anti-Semitism." Now, I looked this up because I actually looked this article up because I wanted to know, is Orban an anti-Semite, right? Which I think is a bad thing to be, and I think it's a dangerous thing to be, but is he, right? And so they talk about, it says, in late November, the office of Hungary's far-right Prime Minister Viktor Orban announced it would donate $3.4 million to causes fighting anti-Semitism in Europe. And anti-Semitism is on the rise in Europe, partly because of the influx of Muslims. We know in Germany there was going to be an anti-Israel protest, and the German government said, don't wear yarmulkes if you're Jewish, because that'll be dangerous. Great. Just what Germany needs is not Jews who aren't allowed to wear their yarmulkes. But then they came out and said, no, everybody should wear a yarmulke, which I'm sure is going to happen. There's a big rise in anti-Semitism. People are fleeing France. Jews are fleeing France. These places are getting dangerous again, as we thought we would never see this again. So here's the New York Times calling Orban an anti-Semite. Now, Orban has said very definitively, I don't want more Muslims in my country. No more. We're not taking them. I don't care what the EU does, right? So it says, so they're trying to cast him as a bigot, right? So he gave $3.4 million to causes fighting anti-Semitism in Europe. The next day, it says, a magazine controlled by Mr. Orban's lawyer devoted its cover to an image depicting Andras Heisler, the leader of Hungary's largest Jewish organization, showered with banknotes. Jewish groups across the world swiftly denounced the cover as anti-Semitic. And Mr. Orban refused to criticize the magazine. It's a vivid example of how the Hungarian leader has both opposed and implicitly condoned anti-Semitism. I don't know. This is what they always say about Donald Trump. Yeah, sure, he's doing great for black people. They got jobs. Things are going better. Their wages are going up. They're doing better than they ever have. Crime is down. Everything's going well. But sometimes he says things that I don't like, and I'm a leftist, and I get to decide what things are racist. So I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see the magazine cover. But again, Orban is a far-right leader of a country whose Jewish citizens, the Jewish citizens of Hungary, say they face less harassment than Jews in any other part of Europe. He's bankrolled. Orban has many Jewish institutions and causes, and he's drawn close to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But in a square that I can't pronounce, Sazbadzag Square, there is a stone memorial whose motifs implicitly play down Hungarian complicity in the Holocaust. It shows an eagle, a symbol of Nazi Germany, attacking a prostrate angel representing Hungary. Now, that's what they're comparing. He gives money to Jewish causes. He's made friends with Netanyahu. The Jews of Hungary say they're safe. But there's a statue that commemorates the Nazi takeover of Hungary. Now, Lucy Dawidowitz wrote a very famous book called The War Against the Jews, in which she traces not anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism was pervasive in the Europe of the time and apparently is becoming pervasive there again, but she traces the killing of Jews, and she says it followed the Germans. It didn't happen in every country. It followed the Nazis. When the Nazis came in, the Jews were in danger. And so To have a statue commemorating the attack on Hungary by the Nazis is not inherently anti-Semitic. What I'm saying is this is untrustworthy reporting. I'm not saying Orban's not an anti-Semite because, again, I'm not living in the country. I'm just saying this is not reporting that we can trust. This is a newspaper, the New York Times, a former newspaper, essentially defending the status quo, which is under attack because it is trying to globalize and destroy local populations, right? I mean, it's all about these dog whistles that only the New York Times can hear because they're dogs. They're the only ones who can hear, but it's not about actions. His actions seem to be philo-Semitic. They seem to be helpful to the Jews. So it just seems dishonest. So it's with real care that I talk about these things.